only two people the whole time.
Yeah, that can happen. Alright, so today for Writers Club, we're going to be talking about writing realistic characters. For those of you who don't know what Narnia is, please either go watch the movie or the book. Read. I recommend reading them personally, just because even though the movie did a good job, books are always better, hands down, even if they do a good job. It's just one of those things where no matter how good of a job they do, the book will always be better. But
some books you wish they had a movie.
This is true. If they could do it well. Yes. So point being, if you don't know what this is, watch, reread, or read or watch for the first time, and you will not only understand the concepts that I'm talking about, but learn a great deal from it, because I'm going to do the basics covering of writing realistic characters and what you can learn from the characters in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. However, if you want to learn more, I would highly recommend reading his actual works or watching the works, because they demonstrate really real people. Now, let's talk about the difference between real people and fully dimensional characters. So, you can have a three-dimensional character who is not a terribly realistic person. For example, Percy Jackson in Harry Potter. Let's be real here. Are people innocent cinnamon rolls all the time? No. There are people who do dumb stuff. There are people who do mean stuff. There are people so great. And I mean, yeah, every once in a while Harry Potter made fun of Hermione, but that was like one scene. That does not make them a realistic character. That just makes them mean for 2 seconds. The whole rest of the series, he's pretty much, and he's generally considered to be a good person. Like, attacks Draco, it was only because of the fact that he literally thought Draco was going to kill him. Like, it makes sense. It just makes sense.
Self-defense.
Exactly. It was kind of basically self-defense. And then similarly with Percy Jackson. Percy Jackson has similar moments where he's just a completely, and then it's like, well, what about this one time when he did this? And it's like self-defense. Or, hey, he had his brother get kidnapped. Or, hey, fill in the blank with reason why he did a bad thing. It's never just he did a bad thing, he made a mistake. So, are there people like that who exist? Absolutely. I'm sure you can probably name off a few people that you know that you're like, dude, I don't know if they've ever made a mistake in their life. I love that human being. They exist. But are they the normal? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. Most people do a lot of things that are problematic. Does that make them a bad person? Also, it's part of being human. So, that's the beauty of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The characters in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe perfectly embody being more realistic. They are genuinely people. They have major flaws that they grow and expand throughout the rest of the series, but we're just going to talk about book one right now. Make it easy. So, your character can be three-dimensional, multi-dimensional, and realistic. The difference being the ability to make mistakes and still have us like the character. Because you can have a character make a mistake and be like, I hate you now. Yes, question.
So what do you mean by three-dimensional and multi-dimensional?
Those are the same thing. I'm just using them
what do they mean?
Okay. Basically, they're, how do I describe them? Okay, here's what I'm gonna give. Flat characters are characters on a show for kids. No offense, but a lot of kids' TV shows just like, I'm Bob and I like green. We know nothing else about Bob.
I just
Bob could die and I don't care. Like, not to be rude or anything, but most kids shows that's the way it is. Where you're just I know nothing about you except that you like green. Great.
Like
exactly. Like I don't care.
I'm just like ugh. Whenever people watch that, I'm like I'm like, turn it off.
Yeah.
Or go and watch TV upstairs.
Yeah, but the reason why it bothers you is because it's unrealistic. A three-dimensional or multi-dimensional, as I've also said, character is when someone has more to them. Like, for example, I like green because it's the color of grass and it reminds me of going out fishing with my dad or something like that. Now, that gives it multi-dimensions to it. But if they're just like green, I'm like, I don't care. So
Unless it's
giving us
your
reasons,
favorite color, also.
giving us reasons to care about the character. Multidimensional.
Okay.
If we don't care about the character, they're not multidimensional. Also, if your character only has one personality trait, not multidimensional. Most of us have more than one personality trait. For example, I typically was, like, as a friend, known as very cheerful, and to those who very cheerful. To those who really knew me, I was fun, silly, goofy, dorky. Like, yes, they were all similar, but they're not the same. One is just like, hi, I'm very helpful, I'm very friendly, and the other is like, I'm gonna go pretend to be a frog. Ribbit. Like, they have multiple personality traits because all of us have multiple facets to our personality. It's not just I'm happy, I am sad, I like green, I like the sky. Like, that's how a person works. A person has deeper reasons and emotions and feelings behind. Um, moving forward with that. So, yes, can you have characters that are lovable and wonderful and it's great and they can still be multidimensional? Absolutely. Harry Potter is a fantastic, and Percy Jackson are both really great protagonists. They are very well written, honestly. I feel like real people. They make mistakes sometimes, they do bad things sometimes, but the thing about the way they do their bad things is it's always got a reason behind it. It's always got a reason why they're still a good person. Now let's talk about some people who aren't always making good decisions for the best reason. All right, the characters of Narnia, and as I said, if you have not watched or read it, don't worry about it. It won't make any sense. Just tune me out. And then go back and rewatch this after you've watched Narnia or read it. Um, so, first character we're going to talk about is Lucy. Most people would consider her the main character, but the fact that she is generally the person in charge of moving things along plot wise. Um, though Lucy is pretty universally beloved, and you might even be like, well, doesn't she fit into the Harry Potter Percy Jackson category? That's not actually accurate. Lucy has the fault and the problem of being incredibly naive. Yes, she's only like 6 in the books, but she doesn't think about danger or anything like that, like most 6-year-olds. Whereas most 6-year-olds in a Percy Jackson Harry Potter like setting might be like, I'm gonna go to Narnia because I want to save my friend or something like that. Like, Lucy just wants to go to Narnia because it's cool. She doesn't care if her she gets kidnapped, if they get kidnapped, who cares? It's fun, it's cool. Kind of her fault there is that she's incredibly naive and innocent, and she doesn't even bring her siblings to Narnia. She's literally putting them in danger. Tumnus told her not to, and she still did. It's like, you know, fine, buddy. So this once again shows how realistic she is. There is no excuse for what she did. She just did. All right. Her older sister, Susan. The problem with Susan, she is a great character. She develops and grows throughout the series and becomes really kick butt and is really awesome. However, she starts out being kind of a jerk. She and Peter both particularly look down on them, but her in particular, Peter doesn't look down on his siblings as much as she does. She tends to think of herself as superior and thinks of Edmund and Lucy as being childish and foolish, and even sometimes looks at Peter and calls him foolish and things like that. And it's like, 14? Like, chill with the ego. But that doesn't mean she can't be a lovable, good character. She has her moments where you're like, oh, that was really sweet of you, Susan. But she also has moments where she's like, stupid children. And you're like, chill, stop being so mean. But it's also realistic. Are there people who look down on their siblings because they're smarter and better? Yes, it happens. It's part of life, unfortunately. Are they right to do it? No, but it still happens. It's still a part of life. And that's what makes her more of a realistic protagonist. All right, next we're going to talk about Peter. So, Peter, what makes him so realistic is that he, like most older siblings, feels that he has to do everything, right? He has to take care of all of them. He has to make sure they do all the right things. He has to make sure that he protects them. And even though that can be a good thing, he forgets to rely on his siblings a lot. There are a lot of times where Aslan's even saying like, dude, your siblings are like useful and can help, and Peter's like, I got this. And he doesn't rely on other people very well because he's basically learned that if he doesn't do it himself, it doesn't get done right. And so he feels that he cannot ask anyone for help. And that is a big flaw that a lot of older siblings and other people who aren't older siblings in general have. And it can develop through a variety of different situations. Older sibling just being one of many that can cause this to develop in a person. Um, and this helped make him a more realistic character. Instead of just being like, oh, I'm protective because I love them, it was like, I'm protective because if I'm not, they're just gonna die. And it's like, no, they're capable people in their own right. Sure, you need to be like protective of them and take care of them, but they won't like immediately die if you aren't watching them 24/7. They'll be okay. And even moments when he does save them from danger, there's a lot of times where Lucy or Edmund or Susan will have a comment and be like, dude, we should try this. And he's like, no, 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 I got this. And so it's important um, to showcase that people can be flawed and problematic sometimes. All right, last one of the four, and then we're just going to talk about in general things that help make characters realistic. Edmund. This is the one that most people consider to be the most flawed out of the siblings. However, I would actually argue he's the least flawed out of the siblings. Depends on how you look at it. Edmund basically sold out his siblings for a bunch of candy, if we're being honest. However, let's look at it deeper. Why did he sell them out for a bunch of candy? Because he was being told he was special. He could have anything he wanted. The real problem here is that Edmund feels like a middle child. He feels kind of stuck, right? He has to watch, he either has to babysit Lucy and is lumped in with Lucy as being too childish and too much of a kid, or alternatively, he feels like he's trying to be the older sibling and therefore has to be mean to Lucy. And so he's kind of stuck in the middle where the older siblings are looking down on him and Lucy's looking up at him and then basically being told no and then running off and crying. And so Edmund kind of feels like the bad guy no matter where he turns. Either he looks to his older siblings and he's not good enough, or he looks to his younger siblings and is too harsh. And he's kind of feels stuck in the middle. He feels kind of unloved and unspecial. And so when the Ice Queen takes him aside and is basically like, you are special, you are unique. You know, if you just tell me where all your siblings are and tell me all about them, I absolutely would like take you to a palace, treat you like a prince. You know, it'll be all good. And to him, this sounds like, hey, someone actually loves me and cares about me unconditionally, which is obviously not true. She's lying to him. But he doesn't know that. He's just like, hey, this is good. I want to be unconditionally loved. Finally, I don't have any of this, oh, you have to be smarter, Edmund. Oh, you have to be nicer, Edmund. Oh, there's always a qualifier for Edmund. And as a result, he's kind of stuck, and it sucks. So, yeah, he did sell his siblings out for candy, but in a way, he also didn't. He was selling them out for affection and love and something that they refused to give him. And even though, yeah, you might argue like they were giving it to him, there were too many qualifiers all the time. He always wasn't good enough in their eyes, and he just wanted to finally be good enough. Finally, even maybe be better than them. That sounds nice, right? I mean, I can imagine some of you guys have moments like that where you're like, ugh, why can't I do anything right? And you're so frustrated with yourself. Wouldn't it be nice to have someone say, you're doing everything right? In fact, you're a freaking royalty. That sounds nice, right? um, so I would say, honestly, that makes him the most realistic character out of all the siblings. They're all hyper realistic, and they're all definitely flawed in really interesting ways. But Edmund is honestly one of the most realistic characters because he's super relatable when you look at it deep down. We all want to be special. We all want to be loved. We all want to be have people tell us that we are the best, and that feels good. All right. So how can we apply this to our own characters? So, as I've been talking about, these are all flaws. Even the good things, like with Peter wanting to protect his siblings, they can be flaws. Because ultimately, even though he wants to protect his siblings, he also does so by ignoring them entirely half the time. Where he's just like, it's fine, I got this, don't give me help. It's like, you need help though, dude. And it's okay to need help sometimes. So look at what flaws real people have, real humans. I would say the next thing is looking at history because history is full of real people, right? Full of people who were great people, full of people who were terrible people, and even those terrible people, I bet you there are like, man, I had no idea he was a terrible person because he was really heckin' nice to me. And so I would definitely take a look at history books and look at real people. See how they can be just as good as bad and just as bad as good. And it's okay to have your characters be bad and good. It's encouraged, actually. Yes.
So it's kind of like in the Revolutionary War, like the guy, I forgot his name. So he was like one of the top generals in the Union side, but then he was also
So you're
a
talking about the
spy.
Civil War or the Revolutionary War?
Revolutionary.
Okay.
The 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 guy who like was one of the top generals in the Union. No, not the Union.
That's why I was
Sorry.
confused.
Yeah,
You're okay.
yeah. It's the like United States side.
Okay, got
That
it.
even though it wasn't the United States yet.
Mhm.
So like he was one of the top generals, and but he was also like a spy.
Mhm.
So he was probably on the like the United States side. He was probably seen like as a really bad guy because he was like a traitor.
Right.
And but then
To
he
the
would
other side,
probably
he was a great guy. He
like
was a patriot.
they would they would probably see like he's a hero.
Exactly. And maybe even in his own eyes, he sees these guys as a bunch of rebel scum, you know? We don't know what his point of view was, and it's important to take that into account, too, his point of view. There's a lot of times where people get brainwashed. They're good people, but they end up having someone tell them this is what's right over and over again until they believe that terrible thing is okay and right. And it just kind of messes with your head, right? And does that make them a horrible person? No, it just makes them a little gullible. And sometimes people are gullible. That doesn't make you stupid or bad or anything. It's no different than when someone falls for a scam. That doesn't make you stupid. That just makes the scammer smart. Like, that's not a problem. That doesn't make you dumb. It just means that they had a little bit of a better tool and were able to get at you. Um, with that being said, with real people in history, a lot of people were flawed people that did really good things. Another example of that is, and I know it's become a musical, so everyone's heard of it, but Alexander Hamilton, for example, he did a lot of phenomenal things for law, for government, for order, for the Revolutionary War. However, he also cheated on his wife, which is not a good thing. And when he admitted that he cheated on his wife, he basically said, "I'm going to tell everyone, so that way no one can accuse me of anything." And his wife was like, "Whoa, whoa, I would have rather that remained a secret, buddy." And yet he, in his mind, was doing the right thing. Because in his mind, he was like, "Hey, if this becomes a scandal, it'll look bad on you." And she's like, "It still looks bad on me, buddy." And so there are sometimes when people think they're even doing the right thing and they're doing the wrong thing. Or they'll do things that are stupid, like cheat on their spouse or betray their best friend. And they are doing so just because they're flawed people and they make mistakes, or even because of the fact that they, like I said, want to be loved, want to be cherished, because something went wrong, or maybe they had a fight with their best friend and so they betray their best friend because they're like, it doesn't matter, we're not friends anymore. And then later they're like, ah, crap, I really messed up. That can happen. And so it's important to look at these historical figures and look at, why did they do these terrible things? Why did they do these good things? Because typically no one's all good or all bad. And that's important to remember with your characters too. All right, next one. Compare them to real people that you know. You might know people who fit the descriptions of Edmund or Peter or Susan or Lucy. You probably run into people like that because there are a lot of people like that out there. These are common flaws. These aren't just Lucy has this flaw. People can in general have flaws, and it's important to realize that um, these people exist. So take a look at your parents, take a look at your siblings, and be like, hey, they do really great job. They're awesome people, but what is their biggest flaw? What is something that bothers me about them? What is something that makes it hard and difficult? And then apply those to your characters and be like, hey, this person is an amazing person, but they have this flaw. And you will find that your characters are actually more relatable because of the fact that people are like, hey, this shows that a good person can make mistakes and still be a good person. And so it makes it a little bit more believable for readers. All right, last thing, ran out of space. So I'm going to go like that. Leave room for your characters to grow. That's the most important part about this. Can characters grow even if they don't have like major flaws? Yes, Percy Jackson and Harry Potter absolutely grow as people. Harry Potter kind of starts out being one of those kids who's like, ha ha ha, butts, and then ends being like very mature and willing to risk his life for his friends and things like that. And Percy Jackson's kind of similarly, where he's like, I'm just a little dork who wants to go to school and be a normal person. And then he ends by being this epic hero, right? So he still grows. You can still have a character that grows. However, the potential for growth is infinitely more when your characters have more realistic flaws. Because people are going to outgrow those things, hopefully. Or alternatively, they're going to grow in a negative way and say, I embrace that I'm a narcissist, or whatever. You can have problems with that. I mean, honestly, that's one thing that I'm going to mention. Lucy, Susan, Peter, and Edmund all could have equally had the potential to grow up and become villains. All of them. Lucy could have decided that nothing matters more than fun, and therefore it doesn't matter who I put in danger, I'm just going to have fun. That's the problem with not realizing that you're putting people in danger and just going after fun. If you continue that mentality into the rest of your life, you're going to hurt a lot of people. She could have just as easily become a villain. But she starts prioritizing her siblings' safety and realizing that real people get really hurt and that life is at stake and life matters. And she starts to realize how important this is. And then you have Susan. She could have just as easily been like, I am better than my siblings. Huh. And just left them in the dust and full on just been a vain, selfish jerk. However, she doesn't. She grows and she develops and she realizes that her siblings have just as valid opinions and feelings as her. And that she actually starts consulting them. Peter, similar thing. He could have just as easily been like, I am the best sibling and will never ask for help and I will be even better because of it. And then totally crashed and burned as a result. Or become super controlling. Some people who think that they are the best at everything become very controlling. He could have become a terrible person. He didn't, but he could have. Edmund, he could have sought love and affection so hard that he finally literally did give up his siblings in like a genuine way. This way he was just like, I don't know, I'm giving them some information. It's not really dangerous, right? He didn't really see it as dangerous. He didn't really see it as giving up his siblings to an evil empress. He was just like, whatever, like she's nice to me and gave me candy and she likes me, so I'm gonna tell her all about my siblings. Like, I mean, he's basically 10 in the books. Like, come on. Of course, he's going to be like, why would someone want to stab my siblings? Like, they're not that special and fancy. And so he doesn't even consider that there could be a danger there. And if he had grown up to become a villain, he totally could have just been like, my value is more important than anyone else's. And therefore, I will throw anyone in front of the bus to save myself. He could have become that way easily. But instead, he grew and became one of the most selfless characters in the entire series. So, moving forward, there are obviously lots of other things that can be applied here. Even ones that aren't books. Avatar: The Last Airbender absolutely can be applied here. There's a bunch of other series that can be applied here, like Fablehaven. That's another great one where Kendra and Seth both have serious problems. Very realistic sibling problems. It's great. There are a lot of authors that do a fantastic job at this, and I'm not saying that Percy Jackson and Harry Potter characters are bad. If you want to write a character that's just generally a cinnamon roll, go for it. People love those characters. but realize that sometimes having a realistic character can actually make them more relatable because they feel more like a real person. Are there cinnamon rolls that exist? Yes, they're just not as common as literature makes them out to be. Um, at this point, I'm finished with the lesson, so I'm going to turn off the video. To recap, as usual, we have a summer contest going on right now. It's due on August 2nd. I don't know why all the posters say July 31st. That is incorrect. It's August 2nd. Um,
2 days
um,
after.
yeah, 2 days after, which is not a lot, but it can be a lot sometimes if you have like one more draft you want to finish or whatever, or need to do a few more edits. So they're due on August 2nd. The prompt for that one, as I mentioned before, but because this is a recording, I'm going to reiterate it, is to write a story in any genre that is 3,000 words or less and includes an artist learning something new about their world. Whether it's magical or factual or murder mystery and they learn that someone's a murderer, I don't know. Whatever you want, as long as they're learning something new about their world and they are a flavor of artist. Now, you can be creative with this. If you want to say they're a gardener's an artist because they, you know, plant everything in a certain way to have all these flowers look gorgeous, you could say that. You can say that an actor's an artist. Absolutely, you can say that. Feel free to be a little um, expansive with the definition of artist. Now, don't go too far off the deep end and be like, ah, yes, a person who pokes a hole in a wall is an artist. Some people might argue that's a yes. I'm going to say that's a no. Sorry, duct tape banana man. I did not like your art. Um, but there is a place for abstract art. I just think that was a little too abstract. But you can if you want to. If you also want to just do it where you're like, hey, I'm going to write the story of the guy who duct taped the banana to the wall, in my opinion, and what really happened. Um, absolutely. If you want to say, like, secretly he got attacked by goblins and he was, like, supposed to do an art expose the next day and he forgot, and he's like, what do I have? Duct tape bananas. Then by all means, if you want to make it funny, by all means, you make it humorous. I'm fine with the abstract art thing as long as you make it humorous. Um, I might not be able to stand it otherwise if you're like, this is art. Duct tape banana. I'm sorry, I can't. But moving forward, I'm going to turn off the video now and allow you guys to have free time writing. Please feel free to ask any questions that you want, and feel free to email me if you have any further questions for the people watching the video.